Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another
Okay,
exciting
wait.
episode.
Before we do the intro, the
Yeah.
fact that there's like all this like computer music and Tim is like,
Yeah, it reminds him of playing his Atari console when he was a lad.
okay, do the intro.
Well, I was going to say that
Run VT.
simply the fact that that was created by AI demonstrates exactly the strength and the problem with AI, doesn't it? You know, just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. Anyway, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, officially syndicated on the IBGR network through TuneIn Radio, I think, or something like that. Anyway, welcome everybody. Today, I'm hoping that this will be a really exciting conversation that we're going to have. We hear a lot about agents and how agents, AI agents, that is, not secret agents, how they are impacting how we do business and how decisions are being made, and how we interact with customer service and all of these different areas. But what impact will this actually have on us? So we've got loads of things to talk about today, but before we get into that, let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. Tracy, ladies first.
Thank you, Adam. Good morning, everybody. I am Tracy Borison, founder of TLB Coaching and Events, a proud partner of DLA Ignite. And I mean, I got really excited for a minute when I thought we were talking about secret agents. So we'll see.
Yeah, sadly not. Rob.
Good morning, all. I am Rob Durant. I am the CEO of U.S. Operations for the Institute of Sales Professionals, and I, too, am a proud DLA Ignite partner.
Richard.
Hi, Richard Jones from Curate, another proud DLA Ignite partner. It's the first time I've ever been on a broadcast that has started with a theme tune, so I'm actually quite excited about that.
Oh, Richard, you need to come on my show because I have a theme song.
Oh, well, you haven't invited me yet, Tracy.
You're excited because of that or in spite of that? Tim.
Oh, hello. My name's Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book Social Selling and Influence, Using Social Media for Cold Outreach and New Business Sales. And may I answer Mike Carrison's comment where he says it's fit like the famous five, that it's always good to have a Tim on your famous five, and we've got lots of lashings of ginger beer here.
Marvelous. And I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA.
What are you co-founder of?
Tim, business partner. So today we're going to be talking about, we're going to be addressing the uncomfortable truths of the future of B2B buying and selling. And I think that there's agents are a really interesting proposition for buyers. And partly, you know, we look out into the world and we see this the spectre of a future where we're not making any decisions for ourselves. Everything is going to be selected for us by AI.
Tracy Spectres, as in James Bond.
I know James Bond.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Give me a little more credit than that.
So is that going to happen? Are we just going to end up buying all of our B2B tools and platforms simply by telling AI we need something new? Or maybe AI will tell us if we need something new, and then it will go and provide these things for us. Is that what the future looks like? Tim?
Not just no.
Oh, Rob?
Hell no.
Hell no. So why is that? Why is that, Rob?
Well, we talked about the Gartner statistic that said 75 and even greater % of people prefer a seller-free experience a few years ago, and they recently backtracked on that, saying, well, the trend has reversed. People don't buy from agents. They buy from people because they want to know a couple of things. They want to know, first of all, that what they're being provided is true, And whoever thought that they would rely on the salesperson for truth? But that's where we are. I'm thankful for that, versus a hallucination. Second, accountability. If I buy from you and you did lie to me, I'm going after you. If I buy from you, but I did it based on my own information, I'm accountable. I don't want that. I want the risk to be on your side, not my side. And by involving a seller, I'm mitigating some of that risk.
Because you can't sue an AI, can you, at the moment? You can only sue people and corporations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that accountability piece is huge, because even in the last, like, I mean, who's called into like a IVR where you're like, agent, I just want to talk to a person, right? Like, we've been having that experience for, I mean, I feel like nearing on 20 years. We've had, I mean, there's good IVR experiences, but there's also bad IVR experiences. So we have that knowledge that there are these specific experiences where we want to talk to a person. And I think a lot of people don't really assess why they want to talk to a person in those scenarios. But the accountability is a big component in that. We want to have someone on our team who's like going to help us to get stuff done. When you talk about tech implementations, or how many tech implementations never get implemented, or get implemented to the degree where people are like suing the company to do because the implementation didn't work. We want a person that we can hold accountable to things.
We do, but you spoke there about customer service. So oddly, I was talking earlier this week to somebody that had worked at an organization that had an AI, I guess you might call it client success or help desk kind of agent. And they said to begin with, it was catastrophic. Nobody wanted to deal with it, and it was wrong 90% of the time. But that was addressed relatively quickly, and it provided a 100% success rate ultimately. And the reason that it was able to do that is that whilst, yes, you think you want to talk to a person, actually, you don't want to talk to a person, you want to get the answer. And if you speak to a person that is on the same wavelengths as you and understands what it is that you're asking, because often there is a problem, they're an expert and you're not, and you ask them a question and they don't understand what your problem is. So what you want is an answer. And the advantage of an AI agent in that scenario is that you don't hear, "Thank you for calling, you're number 147 in the queue, we can call you back." What you get is an instant response. So if the response is right or fit for purpose, then potentially there's an upside to this, isn't there?
I mean, I think it's a good point. Although I think in the world of humans, this is an ongoing investment. And I think that is where potentially people have seen failure, is that they say, I know everything I know today to answer all of my customers' questions. So I'm going to put it in this FAQ. The AI is going to be trained on the FAQ, and then it's going to be able to answer all the questions. And inevitably, there's a question that it can't answer. And so AI, like, compared to those like old versions of like IVR, press 1 to do this, or like say your 16-digit bank code and then it didn't read it properly. Right, or you mumbled on your 9, right, like, and it like bungles everything up. We've made a lot of progress from those days, but I think it's folly to pretend we know all of the questions. And so as long as there's an ongoing like discovery process and updating process and training process that's associated with our chatbots, then I think we do have, again, I think 100%, I don't believe in 100%. So, but I think we can get like very good 98, 99% help rate. But I think, Adam, you made a really important point there, is that people want to get their questions answered.
Yeah. So, okay. So going back to what Rob said, hell no, I want to deal with the person, people by people, there needs to be accountability. So does that mean that agents have no role in the buying process?
Well, I think we've just identified a customer service or let's just call it question answering role. Like it has a question answering role. If I go, like a really great friend of mine, he has a chatbot on his website that answers questions about pricing based on everything he knows about pricing, which is way more than most people know about pricing. So you can go and you can ask questions on the site, and it's like super helpful. But I think it comes back to this, like, what is helpful? I love to get a text message when my gate changes at the airport. I don't want to talk to a person about that. I want to get it on my phone. I want to get it as fast as possible. So if we roll it back to what is helpful, then I think we have a better chance of making a good, I'm still going to call it a hypothesis because we don't know for sure, but making a good hypothesis about what an agent can do to help our people instead of like help our customers, help our brand community, than it is to, it depends. If we're looking at it to replace people, then we're not necessarily answering that question. If we're looking at it to automate a volume issue, we're not necessarily answering that question. So as long as that come back to it being helpful, I think there are roles that agents can play that are very helpful.
I think certainly from a qualification perspective, it could be incredibly useful because, you know, if I was a buyer, being able to describe what I want in my own words is, you know, to me, it's kind of the way, it's ultimately what you want to do. This is my problem. This is what I'm trying to achieve. And you're kind of not waiting to be asked all the dumb questions or going through, you know, sort of, you could actually, it's almost like putting out an RFI or an RFP to the point where anything that comes back is at least qualified to be relevant to what you're interested in. And certainly it would cut out a lot of the sort of the preamble that possibly goes into selling, or the sort of the pre-sales stuff that really doesn't benefit either party, because you're sort of, you know, one person's explaining the same thing over and over again, and the other person is asking often kind of sort of slightly dumb questions. So, you know, it doesn't take away the whole process, but I certainly think it brings value to some of the more clunky bits.
Richard, I'm going to push back a little bit there.
Okay.
Because you're contending that those bits are irrelevant. You're contending that I, as the buyer, know what my problem is, and I know that I want this solved. A good salesperson is going to help you uncover the root cause, not just solve for the symptom, but solve for the problem. And you might not, as the buyer, you might not even know that what you have is a larger problem than just resolving a particular symptom.
I could provide the symptoms. You know, this is the challenge I'm facing, and that, you know, you've got to, that plants the seed, and then the questions are asked about, you know, what are your symptoms like. So, I mean, I know there's going to, you know, a lot of selling is about uncovering a need that, you know, somebody didn't actually realize they had. You know, that I guess is a common scenario, but I would say in a lot of instances people have a reasonable idea of what the problem is they're trying to solve. I think it's, you know, it's give and take. There's never a one size fits all to any of these things, but I think it could help.
Isn't part of the challenge here, though, that if you're selling a product, let's suppose it's, to pick a product at random, a CRM system, and you talk to a prospect, the solution, not surprisingly, is a CRM system, because that's the thing that you're selling and you're trying to make your number. So I think that increasingly buyers are looking to solve a symptom, not the underlying issue, because they don't know what the underlying issue is. And we all know as sellers, it's a great deal easier to sell somebody something that they want to buy than something that they don't want to buy. So given that I'm a buyer and I'm thinking about a new CRM system for my company, I may well know some of the major players in the marketplace. You know, I've heard of Salesforce, I've heard of Microsoft, I've heard of Sugar, and those are products that I might say, well, I'm going to put those into my shortlist. But I can Google and find out what other companies there are, but it's likely not to lead me to the right place, because there's a million different CRM providers. Many of them are not optimized for a company of my size, be it very big or small or medium size or whatever. So I might well ask my AI buying agent to produce me a list of the top 10 most likely candidates. Some of those will be companies that I know and I'm familiar with. Some may be fresh companies. But if that's my starting point, we all know from Kerry Cunningham's fantastic research at Sixth Sense that that if you're not on the list, there's only a 5% chance that you're going to be selected. So the challenge is that getting onto the list is the key thing. And obviously, what we know now, and it's blindingly obvious when you think about it, what we know now is that all of the outreach that we do is designed to engage humans. And humans are not our only audience anymore.
So the whole of the internet is predicated on the fact that it's going to be a human that's going to be searching.
Yeah.
Well, I think, okay, first of all, the reason why we have these conversations, and so many of them, is because there's a lot of complexities that are going on, and like it's worth having a conversation. But I think when we look at, because there was some really good comments in the chat, and you probably pulled them up already, from Greg and Tove. I saw they're talking about a good AI bot will be able to uncover those problems. AI will be able to ask more explorative questions without a quota. I think there are things that speak to like the human emotion component, right? Like I get a quota and that makes it pressure. So then I go out and I have all of this pressure and then you feel the pressure and then I'm trying to like, okay, like that's not helping anybody. Right? But at the same time, if we're trying to, let's just keep using the CRMs as an example. If the CRM's quote unquote sales process is an AI bot that can ask exploratory questions to help me as someone who thinks that my problem is I don't have a CRM system, which is not the problem. It's something deeper than that. Then I could go to every one of the websites and walk through the AI bot process, and it's probably going to convince me that that system is the one I should buy.
But why would you go? Why would you go to their website and go through the AI bot process? Why would you not configure your own AI bot to say, I need the best 5 players in the marketplace against these parameters? I've got 10,000 sales staff. We've got 15 different languages. We're in every single continent in the world. We sell an ultra high value, ultra complex product. We have this back-end infrastructure. We use Eloqua and we use Gong and we use whatever as our sales tools. So our CRM needs to interact with those. Make me a list, because that's efficient.
I'm confused. Are you talking about the buyer's AI agent, or are you talking about when the buyer is approaching the possible vendor and talking to the sales AI bot?
No,
those are two very different things.
That they are, but the reality is that if you are a seller and me, the buyer, uses an AI to compile a shortlist of likely vendors, if my AI does not think that you are a suitable vendor, you're not even getting to have a conversation with me, because I'm not interested. So surely the thing today that should be top of your list of priorities is, are you configuring how you present yourself in the marketplace to recognize that the person that might make the first decision, and therefore the most pivotal decision about whether or not you're going to be selected, is not a human being, it's an AI.
So the question is, Rob, is AI agents are now part of the buying selection committee. Sure. And we could assume that procurement bring their own agents, legal bring their own agents, IT bring their own agents, architecture bring their own agents, and they're all bringing their own agents and coming to the different conclusions that all the different agents come to.
So
and so what we're saying is, if you are an organization that's trying to sell something, you need to recognize that AI is now part of the buying committee.
Oh, I
Which I think
completely
is
agree
fair.
with that. My confusion was I thought we were talking about replacing salespeople with AI agents. And that's very different from making your organization recognized by AI agents. One is,
Absolutely right. But I think that we are still in a situation, aren't we, where most organizations, no, not many organizations still think that the answer to get onto more pitch lists is to reach out to more people cold, to have a spangly new logo, and to sponsor events, because that's a good way of getting your logo in front of people. And actually, if you were a buyer in the modern world and you were looking to buy a new product or service for which there were 1,000 vendors that you could go to, you haven't got time to research all of those. So there's some that you know. If you want a CRM system, you will probably look at Salesforce. Doesn't matter whether it's the best or the worst, that's irrelevant. What matters is the fact that everybody knows it and nobody gets fired for buying Salesforce. So you would look at Salesforce, and you might look at Dynamics because you use Word and PowerPoint. So further down that list, where the products are not so obvious, how do you select those?
Here's so how do you as a vendor, you're going to have to educate AI, aren't you?
You are.
Okay.
With-
I need to I want to stop us there because I think there's a really important piece of this puzzle that's coming up in terms of a narrative that takes humans farther away from humans in the process. So if our next assumption is that we need our SEO or AEO or PEO or GEO or whatever EOs we are on at this point needs to be able to help us get found in an AI search, then we put another layer. Like now we got farther away from talking to people, right? So I'm not necessarily saying that that's good or bad in specific scenarios, but I think it's really important for us to pay attention to when does it help, when does it benefit both parties to put that in there, and when doesn't it? Because if we can be helpful as a company by doing those activities, because that's how our customers are searching, then that's a good thing to do. But we also need to look at each of those activities stage by stage to say, like, does it help that we removed the buying parties from each other? Like at the end of the day, the whole thing is a buying party. We can call, we're the seller and they're the buyer, and we can call that. But we need all of us participating in order to do that. On a big B2B $1 million deal, you're going to have 9 to 12, maybe even more people, humans on the buying party. And so one of those participants might be an AI agent, maybe even two of them.
But I think the key thing here, Tracy, is that the starting point isn't the 1,000 vendors. The starting point is the shortlist, because if there are 1,000 vendors and you've got your chosen 10 and Tim's got his chosen 10 and Rob's got his chosen, well, Rob's diligent, so he's got his chosen 20, Richard's got his chosen 10, all of a sudden you're having to evaluate a huge list of complex products. Whereas if AI takes the first step for you, and everybody is looking for AI to shorten the journey to achieve what it is they want to achieve. So now, where once upon a time you searched on Google and then you were delivered a list of possible outcomes, some of which were paid, some of which were organic, presented to you, and you would read each of those different outcomes, and then you would make a decision about which one looked appropriate, which ones looked appropriate. Now that's not how you work. That's not how any of us work. We do a search, and then AI says, "Here's the list. Here's the answer." And so it's providing us with an answer, not a list of things that are optimized for that, but what it considers to be the answer. And if it doesn't sound reasonable, you maybe will dig further. If it does sound reasonable, you'll likely say, that's the answer, and you'll offer that up. And I think that the challenge is that most organizations are ill-equipped to think about how things are different now, because they don't want things to be different. They have a comfort in saying, this is what we're going to do. Rob, you wanted to talk about this.
So Andrew wrote, hey, Andrew, good to see you. It's been a while. He wrote, why are we promoting and training salespeople when AI will take over their role? Besides what I was saying earlier, we don't want to buy from an AI. We want to hold somebody accountable on the selling side. I was in a great conversation yesterday. We had somebody, guest speaker at my intro to marketing class, and she was with a local marketing agency. And she was talking about how AI has taken over a lot of the roles in the marketing agency. But the buyers don't really like that for two reasons. The whole hallucination bit is one of them, but more to the point, what am I paying you for if I could just hire an agent to do this? She had a fantastic quote. Clients pay based on the seniority in that room. When the agency is pitching to the client, they want to know that people have been there and have done that. And if we were replacing all of the frontline, in her case, it was account managers, if we're replacing all of them with AI, what happens when AI eliminates all of the entry level roles? How does seniority develop? And I contend it's very similar in sales. When you get to a certain level of a sale, it's not just about the facts and figures, and it's not just about the glad handing either, but it is very much about how you believe that person there is going to be there for you after the fact. And if it was just a bot to begin with, you have no security. And that's why we have so much no decision, because people are simply afraid to commit. And replacing humans in the process does not enhance their likelihood of feeling risk-free.
So,
can I just add one thing on that? Because Tove had a really great comment earlier, because you won't trust an AI buying agent. You will want to make the final selection yourself. And it sounds good that the AI is going to do all of this stuff for us. But if it takes so much of our connection out of the decision process, but I still have to make the final decision, exactly what Rob said is going to happen. I haven't built my own confidence in making those decisions. And so now I, as an individual human, do outsource all of my decision making to AI. I don't have any accountability then for myself. I'm like,
I don't think you're doing that though. I don't think you're outsourcing that, and we're not suggesting that you outsource everything. You press a button and AI does the buy for you, but it's a part of a link in the process. You know, once upon a time, you would Google something if it was not an environment that you knew everything about. You'd Google it. It would give you 10 players. You'd go and investigate the 10 players, and you'd make a short list out of the 10 players. Let's say now AI is potentially the first link in the chain. You know, you cannot scrape the whole internet to find every different provider and read every single website. What you can do is you can say to your AI agent, make me, given these parameters, you know, here's what my company looks like. Here's what we're trying to do. This is our operational budget for doing this. Whatever those parameters are, go out and tell me who's in the market. Who can I go to? And it'll come back with 10 options. And you go, okay, well, there's my 10. And it includes 3 that I've heard of, 3 that I've kind of heard of, and 4 that I've never heard of. Okay, well, that's okay, because I'll ask them all the same question and see who comes back. But Andrew said this. Now, the first part of this, companies want AI now to allow them to reduce headcount and higher and lower labor costs. So, Tim, you probably want to say something about this. Hiring people and sacking people and replacing them with AI. Is that a good move or a bad move?
A bad move.
Why is that a bad move?
But what you should do is you actually should take the people that you've got and train them on AI.
And what's the advantage of that? Because you're not reducing costs.
Because, well, if you sack people, then all you're doing it's a margin play. Well, if you actually take people and train them on AI, then actually what you're doing is, why would you sack people that you've trained, you've recruited, that like the company and all of those things? Because it's, we've seen it that people just get bad press. Why not take the people that you've got and actually train them on AI, and that surely will get growth. But I think that coming back, the point being is that as we go through the buying process, we're maturing as buyers, aren't we? I remember the time, actually, funny enough, there was a time before Google and Ask Jeeves and stuff, and we did, and you went to a book on the shelf, and that's how you found out about things. And then we went through a process of going to Google and finding out things. But now we can get such a nuance in terms of, as Adam said, we can say, we've got factories in these different parts of the world, and this is and AI will give us a really, really useful answer. I think everybody would want to do that from a buying perspective. So we do two things. One is we use our own background and say, well, I know these people in the market, and I know Steve at Salesforce, whatever. But we're also going out and saying, this is how we would use AI, and we would use a nuanced answer. I don't think that we would ever go to a board and spend £1 million on a new system and say, I didn't talk to anybody, I just used AI. I think that would be career limiting. So I think there's this balance, but I think that the difference is this move where I kind of feel it. For me, it kind of feels like when we started the business 10 years ago, I kind of feel like we're there like we were 10 years ago, where we saw this new technology that was taking place, and we could see that it was actually that something was happening in the market. We didn't know what it was when people started using social media, and we were saying, oh yeah, people are going to start using it, and people said, nah, it's a fad, it will go away. And I can see this thing happening with AI, where there's going to be a maturity taking place, and gradually, we know the story of the frog in the saucepan, don't we? Yeah. So if you put a frog in a saucepan and it's cold, it just stays there, and then as you turn the heat up, and then ultimately you boil the frog because it doesn't feel the change in the temperature. Whereas if you take a frog and put it in boiling water, it jumps out. And so what happens is that as things change, we actually don't really recognize the change that's going on around us. And I certainly see that the AI is becoming part or standard of the buying process from a buying perspective. And we should assume now, as sellers, that the buyer is using AI and is part of the buying committee, which means that there is now, I think we should be recognizing that there is an AI buying process and there is a human buying process. And because of that, we have to change the way that we do things to try and meet and understand what that means. I totally agree with you, Tracy, that we always want to have a human element of it. And I think that there will be for a long time. But we have to recognize that the whole of the internet was written for humans. So we're now in a situation, I've seen the discussion between Tove and Greg, which is the AI doesn't buy on emotion.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, isn't it?
Yes. So all of the websites, all websites are based on human psychology. I'll read the top bit and my eye moves from left to right, and I found the website because of SEO, and the button says buy now, or it says start your journey now, or whatever it says. And we've all, $1 billion industry of human psychology. And what we're seeing now that isn't necessarily the case. We have a whole set of the internet that's going to be trawled by AI and is actually going to make a decision. That means that I'm not saying that your brand is irrelevant, but it becomes less relevant because AI doesn't care about your brand. It doesn't care about the emotion. It doesn't care about all of those things that are coming together. And that's the revolution that's kind of taking place. So
I think on the subject of that emotion, I think that this is really important. Tove says, final step, the close is done on an emotional side. And I think yes and no. I don't think it's like, I like that brand and therefore I'm going to buy from that company, or I like the design of that and therefore I'm going to buy that. But ultimately, we'd already said that the key thing here is there has to be a human that puts pen to paper and signs this, because somebody needs to be accountable. And whilst that accountability is not emotion itself, what drives that accountability and that confidence is emotion. So, if there are three people that are pitching to you and one of them you think, I believe I can trust this person, that's emotional. And that's the thing that will make you put the ink on the paper. And I think that we cannot overstate the importance of salespeople. Will always have a role in closing and convincing that I'm the people you should deal with. However, that only works if you're in the room. And the reality now is, if you're not in the room, it doesn't matter how much somebody likes you, because you're not going to be part of the conversation.
I think there's so many things happening here, just the different tangents of the conversation. I think I like Greg's comment here about how, as a buyer, I want my problem solved. As a seller, I want your money. I think that's the problem, right? Like, if we're looking at sales, if it's a salesperson, first of all, to address Tim's point about the replacing sales reps with AI, right? Like, if you've trained your sales reps in a way that process doesn't work, your sales reps aren't delivering what you want them to deliver. And so you're like, I'll just replace them with AI because that's cheaper. And you train the AI on all the same stuff. It's not going to do anything either. Yeah, it's going to be cheaper, but it's still not going to get you the results that you're looking for. If we are configuring any sales related AI, anything, based on I want your money, then how is that supposed to help someone solve their problem? Because I think good sellers, to reference what Rob said earlier, if you're the buyer and I want my problem solved, I'm the seller and I want your problem solved.
As AI stands at the moment, who's it benefiting most? Is it benefiting the buyer by giving them a much more efficient way of probably educating themselves as to how to buy what it is they're interested in buying, cutting through all the sort of the crap that you'd have to sort of cut through on websites? Or is it helping the seller sort of purvey a better purvey their message in a more kind of compelling way? I mean, I'm inclined to think at the moment that the buyer is kind of sort of being empowered, and the seller is still kind of somewhat exposed to what's always been on the internet, because that's been sort of collected up and turned into artificial intelligence. So they're possibly having less control over what it is they're trying to say.
But isn't the case that, as Tim said, once upon a time you used to have to go into a library and go to the reference section to gather the information that you needed to make what you thought was an informed decision? I say what you thought because you read the wrong book, you came to a different decision than I did, who read a different book. And then the internet provided that, and Google's desire was to make everything visible, so people had the entirety of humankind's knowledge at their fingertips, which helped you to make a more informed decision. And AI is just the same thing. So AI is saying, you don't need to read 1,000 pages to make an informed decision. I will read 1,000 pages and give you the shortcut. Now, but I don't think it's helping buyers or sellers. I think it's helping everybody.
As things stand, it's not. Google has, the whole concept of the search engine is that if you pay, your message rises to the top. AI is arguably more democratic, is it not? In so much,
Google is still, any search engine has an element of advertising which you pay, but it has an element of organic which you don't pay for, which is based on what Google thinks is the thing you're looking for.
But it kind of depends how much, how far you want to dig down the list of whatever it is you're searching for. But, it's perhaps curated in a way that favors those who spend money on promoting whatever it is they're trying to sell.
Well, if
they
you're
are
on SEO, that's true. But for everybody, you do a search and you get 3 or 5 things at the top of the list which are paid for, and then you get the rest are organic things, generally speaking. And those organic things are based on Google's algorithm saying, I'm looking for this thing. That page seems to be the most credible page about this thing. So I'll offer that up towards the top of those search results. But the fundamental mistake with this is that there's an awful lot of pages out there. So
there's also ways of gaming the system, isn't there? So
yeah, but people will still try to game the system with AI, won't they?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I guess it's.
Well, this is what I think it comes back to, right? Like, if we want a game, yeah, that's a good thing for a computer, right? We've had computer games for years, except now we're trying to game a system. And like, I'm going to just straight up say, Greg, I take offense as a marketer to your comment about how the quota is the goal and consultative problem solver trusted advisor is marketing. There are people in the world who have built their businesses on just driving revenue. They don't actually care about solving a problem. They want to make money. And yeah, they're probably going to create sales agents that just do that. I'm going to question whether or not they will continue to make money, because still today, until the point where we have AI agents buying from AI agents, there's a human at the other end of that. We're going to see how it goes. We don't have all the data yet. At the same time, you can show up, and I'm not saying to not use AI, but if your focus is on solving problems, my focus as a human is on solving people's problems. I make connections to solve people's problems. I provide a consulting service to solve people's problems. I help my neighbors to solve people's problems, right? Like, I have a deep desire as a human to solve people's problems. I can use the AI. There's a role for that in helping me solve people's problems. But there's a difference between using technology to do what you believe in doing, solving people's problems, or using technology to sell stuff. These are not the same thing. And we could batch them both into the sales process, I think, to our own. It's not going to help.
Tracy, I want to pick up on that same comment because I bristled at it too when I read it. If the quota, the money, is the goal of sales, let me ask, what is the goal of a teacher? The goal of a teacher is to teach, but the teacher gets paid for doing it. So isn't the goal of the teacher money? The goal of the doctor is money. The goal of the priest is money. I do not contend that the goal of any of those.
Of the above.
Yes. Well, to say that the goal of the salesperson is money is too reductive. If I am not performing a service of value to the buyer, I'm not going to be making a lot of money anyway. It's just that the role of the salesperson is more commission-based, so the amount of money differs. And because of that, we've had a lot of bad apples. I still contend that most salespeople, like most people, are good, but those don't make for very interesting Hollywood stories. It's the Hollywood story that has soiled the reputation of the bad seller. Or the seller as bad. But no, the goal is not to make money, because if you don't do your job very well, you don't make money.
Well, and this is the thing. I think we keep talking about this as like the goal is either to make money or not to make money. I think we forgot somewhere in the process that when I go out and help people, I make money because there's a value exchange that's happening, right? You have a problem. You don't want to have that problem anymore. I'm the doctor. I can heal your problem. We exchange. There's a value exchange. I get money. You get your problem fixed. That's a mutual benefit. Well, yeah, we can call it a transaction, but depending on, like, and because Greg also had a comment earlier about the difference between B2B and B2C, which I think is important, is that like in B2C, most things are transactional. I need a fridge. I go buy a fridge. I have a fridge, right? Done. Maybe I like the brand. Maybe I'm completely indifferent to the brand. It's like in B2C is a different animal. In B2B, let's say you're buying $1 million custom software package. This is not just a transaction. It's going to touch how many people in your business. It's going to take how long for you to do it. Is it going to actually solve the problem? Because how many digital transformations don't actually solve the problem? At the end of the day, there's a mutual value exchange. And if there's not a mutual value exchange, then one of the parties is going to be unhappy with it. Then we come back to the accountability component we started the show talking about. And now we have a big messed up loop. And then pretty soon, here's the other thing, right? So that happens one time, bad reviews go up on the internet. What do you think AI is reading? Your reviews. Right? So now you all of a sudden don't get into that process. This is not like a one stage puzzle that can be solved. A business touches so many pieces. And I am like, I'm a total believer that AI has an important and even meaningful and helpful role in that. But if we are not looking at the whole system and we're like, we'll just get rid of our salespeople and replace them with sales agents, and you're like, well, actually, what we're realizing now is you didn't notice the role that your salespeople played. So now we can use that as a like learning opportunity and like build on that, because now we realized, oh, they were actually being helpful in this component. So either we have to train the AI to be helpful in that component, or we need the people back to be helpful in that component. But this is like, it's not as easy as just saying, replace this with an agent. It's going to break the entire system.
Not. Of course, it isn't as easy as that. But I think that the key thing here is that AI is being thrust upon us, whether we want it to be or not. So you type in something to Google, which for pretty much every human being on the planet is their starting point for doing research on something. You type it in and it gives you some information which you probably didn't know before. And now the first thing that you see when you go to Google is an AI answer, which tries not to give you the sources, which Google has done previously, but it tries to give you the answer, which is the thing that you're looking for. Now, the problem with that is that that's Google's view of truth. If you go to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever your chosen AI tool is that you may or may not have, you get to have your view of truth. You get to say, I'm going to tell you loads and loads and loads of stuff about me, and then I'm going to ask you a series of questions on what you think is going to be most appropriate. Now, I agree. Only a fool would say, what is the one option for this that I should buy? And assuming that it did come back and give you one option and you just went out and bought it, that's madness. However, if you were to say, give me a short list, which is what most people would do, and that short list may be half a dozen or it may be 20, that's a very different proposition when you start with that point. Very different proposition than the internet, which has got millions of offerings. And I think that's the point, isn't it? The point is that now that's already ingrained in people's buying process. Tim went on holiday to Easter Island and he said to ChatGPT, make me an itinerary. What are the things that I have to see when I'm there? And it came back, here you go.
And that was 2 years ago.
Yeah. And so this is already ingrained in our behavior. I don't believe that there's a single person that uses Microsoft Word that hasn't clicked the Copilot button to get something reworded for them. Whether they choose to keep it or not, whether they think it's any good or they use that as a matter of... But everybody's tried it. Everybody has gone to Gemini or ChatGPT and asked it a question. Often they don't know what the question is to ask it. So they just go, oh, write me something about this, or who's the best musician of all time, or whatever the question is. But it's a normal behavior now. And to not take that into consideration when we're planning our strategies, and particularly our go-to-market strategy, sounds like it's incredibly short-sighted.
I don't know. I mean, personally, I'm not arguing with that at all. Like everything that you just said, right? Like this is true. I mean, I love to create my own content, and I hate that the like Copilot pops up everywhere. I'm trying to find a way to turn it off. If anybody knows how to do that, please let me know. But there's you guys, I mean, if you guys have seen me on the show, you guys know me, right? Like, I'm always come down to like, what's the purpose of this? It's very easy to get caught up and replace this with agents. It's very easy to get caught up in that. And actually, there's a lot of solutions so quote unquote solutions that will say that's the answer. Let me just take all your salespeople and I'll document your sales process and we'll place all those salespeople. It's not a holistic look at the system. And so, like, yes, your buyers are using AI. Yes, I think internally from a business perspective, and I use AI all the time for my personal life. But my entire baseball coaching strategy is based off of AI, right? But like, we have to pay attention, and we have to pay attention to our intention. And if we're doing that, we can come up with really good ways to use AI agents that are helpful for us, helpful for our customers, helpful for our prospects. We can do that, but not if we are not asking that question. So, yes.
So just let me say, we did, ahead of the show, we produced a long list of things we were going to talk about. We were going to talk about the dying brochure, why traditional websites designed for human, emotionally useless to AI agents. We were going to talk about the dual buyer journey, some of which we have done. We were going to talk about the end of brand strategy, the death of go-to-market silos. We were going to talk about how algorithms don't care about legacy brands or emotional storytelling. So what do they care about? We were going to talk about will content marketing as we know it survive if AI agents are the primary consumers of B2B research. We're going to talk about a whole host of things. And we kind of just went down one rabbit hole, in part driven by the fantastic questions we've had from everybody that's in the audience today, of which there are a lot. So maybe next week we should pick up on some of those things that we.
I think we should run this again. I've been thinking.
I was gonna say, I think we could just like use that same descriptor and do like part 2.
I think we should do it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
The sequel.
Because I do think that, as you said, Tim, you know, when we started the business, we thought social is this new social for business is an entirely new world that nobody is really capitalizing on. And we are probably even earlier now with AI. You know, AI in the last 6 months has gone from being a nice little thing that we kind of play with to now being ingrained in so much of what we do and how we make decisions. And it seems that there are so many pitfalls here that if people don't really understand and they haven't got a plan for, they are likely to come a cropper. And I think it's contingent on us to bring those conversations out into the light. And, you know, with our great audience and viewers today, get their take on this. You know, so like you guys in the audience, what are you doing? What successes have you had? Where does your company stand in terms of laying people off and replacing them with AI? Or are you equipping them with AI as being a major growth agent? Have you adjusted your marketing and your go-to-market strategy in order to embrace how AI views you? Or do you think it isn't going to impact you? Do you think actually we're going to get to a point where it's all about people? And is as Tove said, you know, emotion is the first step, emotion is the last step, and there's a bit of kind of logic in the middle. Is emotion still the first step? I think we all agreed that emotion is the last step for major purchases. You know, you've got to talk to somebody and be comfortable giving them money. But is it still the first step or isn't it? And if it is,
Yes.
What does that first step look like?
Without pain, there's no motivation to do anything.
Yeah, maybe.
And I think that comes back to the like conversation that was happening in the chat. Like, high five, you guys. They're killing it in the chat. We can't even keep up with
amazing chat. Absolutely amazing. Thank you.
But this point about like basic human psychology, what is basic? We go and look for a problem to solve when we have pain. That's a human emotion. And so, like, yes, we can symptomatize that pain in lots of different ways. Okay, now I'm feeling this pain because I see we're bleeding this revenue here, or like here's the cuts, and now I can go get a whole bunch of Band-Aids to fix the symptoms. Or you can have somebody that you trust come and help you And is it one or the other, or is it actually both? Right? Like, I need that Band-Aid to come and do some stuff. I do need that. And if like I'm the one that like waving knives around and that's why I end up with all these cuts, then like maybe there's someone else that can help with that component. I got weird. Sorry, that's a bad example. But like the point is, I don't think any of these things are like holistic, that there's room for both of them, right? There's room for Band-Aids. There's room for actual problematic support and coaching and help. And again, there's room for everything. There's room for people who believe the earth is flat.
But there is no more time today, unfortunately. So we have run out of room. So everyone in the audience, I mean, I'm speechless at
Greg, Andrew, Tove.
Do
we have an outro song?
Bobby, Lisa,
Nicole, Yayan, just loads of you. Thank you so much. So if you would like to be a guest on the show or join the conversation or the fight, as it sometimes is, then whoops, wrong one. So scan the QR code and let us know what you'd like to talk about, because we are always up for a debate on particularly things like this, because this is where the future lies. So until next week, when there will be a part 2 of this, I suspect,